Scott Foster here at the Nebraska Community Foundation's 2024 annual celebration and training. This is their 30th year, and we're joined now by Sarah Sinnett and Melissa Norgard. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
No, we're excited to be here.
Very good. So I guess I love the story of Sidney, because there was a sense after the closing at Cabela's that Sidney was just going to just blow away in the wind and there was going to be nothing left. But that's just not been the case, has it, Melissa?
No, not at all. So we have a group of really great people in our community who refuse to quit and refuse to take no for an answer. So I think that helped push us through some really tough times. But a lot of people who had really great ideas started businesses, got their idea up off the ground, and now being successful.
So I know at one point, I think there was talk of several, like a couple hundred houses for sale. And when I've been through there more recently, it's hard to find anything for sale. So that's kudos to you guys for doing that. So tell me a little bit about your group and what you're doing right now.
So we have several different things going on in Sidney. There's kind of been a magic that's been happening in the community, I would say, within really the past 7-8 years, that we had to kind of control our own destiny and pivot and understand what that was with everything that we had from a change. So we were introduced to the Nebraska Community Foundation actually through a group called E3. It was a pilot program through the Community Foundation that stands for Energizing Entrepreneurial Ecosystems. And it's a form of economic development, really, that historically economic development has always been trying to attract large employers to an area to hire a bunch of people. And this really changed the lens on that of supporting small business growth as our largest economic development tool. And we were so lucky to be part of that initial experiment. And it has just gone gangbusters for us. And from that, we actually were more introduced with the Community Foundation, but then started our own unrestricted endowment within Sidney. And Melissa's probably the best one to speak to that.
Yeah, and I think tagging on to that too is I actually was doing the economic development at the city when Cabela's and Bass Pro merged together. And somebody told me nobody's going to come in and save you guys. And like Sarah said, our destiny was in our own hands. And I think that we found some really great people through that process who were faced with some really tough realities. You know, there were a lot of families where both mom and dad worked at Cabela's, and now we're facing, okay, we have no job. What are we going to do? And lots of those people ended up staying and finding something else or starting their own business. So through all of that, starting our own community affiliated fund through NCF has been amazing. We have only been in existence about 1.5 years. So we are what I call still in our infancy, and we're still learning a lot of stuff, but we've been super fortunate to receive a donation from a Sidney donor advised fund of $100,000 to get us started. And they've issued us a challenge grant about 1 year ago that if we raise $250,000, they'll give us $1 million.
Wow. Wow. You know, so that sense of we're going to have to do this on our own. Nobody's coming to help us seems to really have been a driving force in a lot of what the Nebraska Community Foundation is kind of doing with a lot of these smaller communities. And it seems like that's certainly been the way in Sidney.
And without NCF, and I think Sarah would say this too, is I think Sidney would look different now if we had never been introduced to the Nebraska Community Foundation. Our coordinator, Jana Jensen, is amazing and helps us through hard conversations and also helps us celebrate really big wins. And the network of individuals from other communities that we've been introduced to and being able to learn from them and how they overcame adversity in their community it's invaluable.
I really think it's just a network of individuals all across the state that just inspires so much hope and positivity. I think it can be, especially in a catastrophic event like that, it can be very easy to say, woe is me, what are we going to do? Panic. And I did.
Sure.
And I think this just inspired us so much by all these phenomenal people here every day. I'm just blown away with the phenomenal people and abundance we have in Nebraska to really see we have some cool stuff going on. The only people limiting ourselves are ourselves. And they really taught us to dream. And I never would have imagined that we lost it. Cabela's was an employer of 2,000 people in a town of 6,000. And now we have more. I don't know what it was before, but it feels like there's more philanthropic activity going on now. We've had 112 new businesses launch and are still open in that town, including all of our businesses that never left and have been pillars of the community forever. And they're the ones giving back to the community. They're the ones pushing it forward. And I think being involved in all of this, people ask why we do what we do. And it's the community. It's easy to rally behind that community when they're doing such phenomenal. It's everybody pushing everyone forward. And it's just the best network of people ever.
One of the things that I think is really cool about Sidney too is you've embraced your history there. So you can go downtown in Sidney and kind of have a walking tour. And I think that's a wonderful thing to bring a community together that, hey, we not only is our future great, we have a great history that you can embrace too. And I think that's good. Tell me a little bit about one of the things that you did. It was an inclusive playground. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Sarah can probably speak to that a little bit better because she was part of that committee. But yeah, it was two sisters who came up with an idea of we need an inclusive playground. The city park was old equipment. Some of it was probably donated. It was rock and gravel. I mean, it was not friendly for kids, especially kids and people with disabilities.
Yeah, I would say with that, I always say it sounds so silly, but that park is the moment that changed my outlook on everything. And you think it's silly because it's just a park. Right. It wasn't just a park. And this is where I learned so much about leadership and everything else, because the two moms, Maddie and Allie in town that started that, they actually approached me to be involved with it. And I'm like, we don't need a new park. What are you talking about? You're crazy. And then every question I threw at them, they had a response. They had thought it through. They were very thoughtful. By the end of it, they had actually convinced me to be the treasurer on the project. And we had raised almost $800,000 in a year's time, all privately funded, and put up that park within Sidney. And if you're ever out there, I can guarantee it's one of the best in the state. And it was that moment that taught me we're the ones telling ourselves no. We're the ones that are saying things aren't possible. And anyone can do anything when they really put their mind to it and are strong leaders. And those girls were so instrumental in that. And that was really the catalyst for me that turned that page. And I think that really started to repaint our story in Sidney and Cheyenne County for what we're going to be.
A light bulb moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How about the youth entrepreneurship programs that you're doing?
Yeah, so that started with the E3 group that Sarah touched on earlier, the pilot program through Nebraska Community Foundation that Sidney was fortunate enough to be a part of. Through that, we worked with our friends at Network Kansas and E2 to get some curriculum for youth entrepreneurship because, as Sarah always says, the one thing that's holding youth back from moving back to their hometown is they don't think that there's a job opportunity for them. So engaging with some of these kids when they're seniors in high school and getting them to go through the steps of thinking about an idea, making that into a business, writing the business plan, going through the financials, making a pitch to a panel of professional people, and then doing a trade show to show their product or business idea off to people in the community. First year was last year, and it was awesome. There were how many kids last year?
I think 13.
And 3 have successfully actually launched the business that they did the business plan for in the class and are actually doing that as a job. So seeing those things happen is just awesome in the community.
Having youth have ownership, giving them a little ownership. That's amazing. Very
I
good.
would just echo on that. For me, as the experience, it was so much more than just a competition, because now we followed up with a lot of those kids a year later to see where they're at and where they're interested in. And a lot of our youth don't feel valued in their community, or they have a voice and they're part of the big picture. But some of the interviews we've talked with the kids and everything else, what I've heard is this experience, everyone knew that they could, but until they were empowered to and enabled to and received feedback on that, they didn't think that they actually could. And now they feel like they're a voice in their community. The thing that was the most powerful thing to me is we actually have one kid he's 19 years old. He is actually planning to take over the funeral home from a 63-year-old that doesn't have plans for a successor. He's been doing that since he was 15. He's going to get a certificate, and then he wants to do so much more with it and add different services in there. So we're keeping a business in town with someone that's younger and taking it over. But then after we talked with him, he turned around and another one of the students and asked how they could donate to the competition for this year. And it's just a phenomenal story that these are our leaders. And now I have connections with them that I never would have before. And it's all out of this program. And it's so powerful.
What a great story. And I see that you're hiring an entrepreneurial navigator too. That's awesome.
So that role was hired about 1.5 years ago. So through our E3 group, as we would go to these peer learning sessions in other communities, we would brainstorm about, okay, what's our roadmap look like? What are some of our goals over the next 3 years as we go through this program? And one of those things was a lot of times entrepreneurs want to start a business, but they don't know where to get started. They don't know how to write a business plan. They don't know where to go to the bank. They don't know what they need to put together. So this entrepreneurial navigator, who is Alicia Juliffs, actually, she's like the connector. So people can call her and say, okay, this is my business idea. What resources do you have that can help me get my business started?
A spoke in a wheel.
Yes, and she has been instrumental in helping business owners launch their business and be successful.
Well, ladies, a wonderful story from Sidney, Sarah Sinnett, and Melissa Norgard. Thank you so much for being here and inspiring the state of Nebraska with what you've done in Sidney. Thank you so much.
Thank you.